I'd spent 3 weeks planning my daughter's 11th birthday. It wasn't going to be grand, not in the way Pinterest or Instagram might define it, but it was going to be filled with color, laughter, and love. The kind of birthday I'd wished someone had thrown for me when I was her age. We'd tied balloons to the fence and draped homemade banners across the back patio. Wyatt grilled hot dogs while I laid out juice boxes and potato salad. Kids ran around barefoot in the grass, and the air smelled like spring. Neighbors came. My cousin Heather showed up with her twin boys. Even my mother-in-law made an appearance. Stayed for 15 minutes, which was something. Everyone smiled, took photos, clapped when my daughter blew out the candles on store-bought cupcakes I'd picked up last minute. The cake Dina had promised to bring never came. She never came. I didn't say anything out loud, not then, but I felt it, like a bruise under a sleeve you don't remember getting. The absence wasn't just about the cake, it was what it said, again. After the guests left and the patio lights were still glowing, I sat alone on the back steps. The laughter had faded. The paper plates were tossed. My daughter was inside, watching TV, content, and that should have been enough. But I couldn't let go of the ache. Dina. She had this way of making her presence known even when she wasn't in the room. Loud, dramatic, always walking in like she owned the air around her. I'd spent years navigating her moods, the cold shoulders, the fake smiles, the texts she ignored unless it was convenient. I was always the one smoothing things over, the nice one, the peacemaker, the one who didn't push back when she rolled her eyes at my suggestions or made a joke at my expense in front of family. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, she held up the little holiday crafts I'd made for everyone and said, "Well, isn't this just precious?" Like I was a 5-year-old showing off scribbles on a napkin. Everyone laughed. I did too, because what else could I do? But today felt different. It was late when I got the text. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up, half expecting some sort of apology. Instead, it read, "Hey, I need $1,150. Emergency. Can you send it tonight? I know you're good for it. Family supports family, right?" No mention of the party. No, "Sorry I missed it." No, "How was the birthday?" Just a demand. Wrapped in entitlement, pressed against my ribs like a weight I hadn't agreed to carry. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. Was she serious? After skipping my daughter's birthday, the one she promised she'd help with, she had the nerve to ask for money? I didn't respond. Not right away. I went to the living room where Wyatt was half asleep on the couch, TV remote in his hand. I asked if he'd seen Dina's message. He rubbed his eyes and nodded. "Yeah, she messaged me too." The morning light slipped through the blinds before I was ready to face another day. The air in the house was still heavy with the sweetness of leftover frosting and balloons that had already started to droop. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. Another message from Dina. The first one I saw was short, curt, but the next one came with guilt woven between the words. "You know we always help family. You owe me after last year." I read it once, twice, then a third time, each pass making my chest feel tighter. The phone screen glowed in the dim light while the coffee maker clicked on in the background. Wyatt had already left for work. His absence wasn't new, but it felt louder that morning. I stared at the words until they blurred, feeling the same mix of disbelief and quiet anger that had followed me since the party ended. The kitchen still smelled of sugar and disappointment. The empty chair across from me, hers, sat like a quiet accusation. I caught myself whispering, "It's strange how silence can feel louder the next morning." And I wasn't sure if I meant the house or the people missing from it. When I opened my laptop, a reminder flashed across the screen. Property taxes due in 2 weeks. The timing was almost poetic. Another buzz from my phone followed. Dina again. I ignored it and clicked into our joint account. The balance wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what she imagined either. As I scrolled through old transactions, one stood out like a bruise. 6 months ago, a temporary loan to Dina for her car repair. It was supposed to be paid back next month. It never was. I remembered that phone call, her voice light, almost casual. "You're such a lifesaver, Delara. I'll pay you back, promise." The promise faded just like all the others. A flashback hit me hard. Last Thanksgiving, her loud laugh filling the room as she mocked my handmade gifts. I had smiled through it, cheeks burning, because that's what I always did. Be polite, be understanding, keep peace. The phone rang again, this time my mother-in-law's voice on the other end, soft but sharp in that way only she could manage. Dina's going through a rough patch, she began. She told me she reached out. Maybe you can help her out, just this once? I bit down on my tongue before replying. Just this once had turned into a lifetime of giving in. I hung up, not rudely, but with a tone that made it clear the conversation was over. Not long after, Dina's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Her voice came through, brisk and self-assured. I don't understand why this is such a big deal, she said. You have more than enough. Don't make it awkward. It wasn't about the money. It never was. I let her words hang in the air before I spoke. It's not awkward, Dina. It's just enough. There was a pause, long enough for both of us to feel it. Then I ended the call mid-sentence. My hands trembled slightly as I set the phone down. I realized I'd never hung up on her before. For the first time, I felt something close to relief. Silence had a strange sweetness when it meant freedom. By noon, the house had settled into a deceptive calm. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the drawing my daughter had taped to the fridge. Me, smiling, holding a bunch of balloons, underneath it, in shaky crayon letters, the best mom ever. The edges had started to curl. That picture did something to me. It reminded me what this fight was really about. Not pride, not revenge, but self-respect. The kind of strength I wanted her to recognize one day in herself. When Wyatt called during lunch, his tone was cautious. Hey, he said softly. Mom called me. She said Dina really needs help. Maybe we should just send her something small, just to keep the peace. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Wyatt, why does peace always mean I have to lose something? There was silence on the line. Then a sigh. I just don't want it to get ugly. Too late, I said quietly. It's already ugly. We just keep pretending it's not. When the call ended, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, unsure what to do with the quiet that followed. I looked again at the crayon drawing and whispered, "Not this time." I sat down and typed out one final message to Dina. I can't help you this time. Please don't ask again. My thumb hovered for a moment before pressing send. The vibration that followed felt different this time. Final, almost cleansing. Evening came slow. The light stretched long shadows across the living room as I cleaned up what was left from the party. Balloons half deflated, crumbs in the carpet, the faint sound of neighborhood kids playing outside. Normal life, pretending nothing had changed. I was washing the last plate when my phone buzzed again. I wiped my hands and glanced at the screen. The message preview read, "You'll regret this, Delara." I froze. The rest of the message vanished before I could open it. Deleted. I stared at the screen, heartbeat heavy, waiting for another ping that never came. The house felt colder suddenly, the kind of cold that starts in your stomach and works its way out. I turned off the kitchen light and stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. In families like ours, regret doesn't come in words. It comes knocking. It was late afternoon when I drove to the community center. The parking lot was half empty, the kind of quiet that lets your thoughts get too loud. Volunteering there once a week had become my small escape. Folding donated clothes, helping sort through books no one read anymore. It was routine, predictable, safe. Inside, I found comfort in the simple rhythm of work, but that peace didn't last long. "Delara," a familiar voice called. It was Mrs. Halpern, one of those women who remembered everything, every name, every story, every family. She smiled warmly, leaning on her cart. "I was so sorry to miss the birthday. How did it go? I didn't see Dina there. She always shows up, doesn't she?" The words were soft, but they hit like a pin to a bruise. My mouth answered before my brain could catch up. "She had a work thing," I said, smiling as if the lie tasted fine. Mrs. Halpern nodded, picking up a box of used mugs. People who don't show up usually have nothing to say, she said, more to herself than to me. But it stayed with me. On my way home, her voice followed me like a whisper in the car. I thought about all the times Dina had shown up, loud, commanding, performing generosity like it was theater. Then I remembered one particular day, 5 years ago. Wyatt's father had mocked me at a family barbecue for not working a real job. Dina had stepped in, voice firm, defending me so gracefully that everyone fell silent. I'd been grateful, until later, when she leaned in and said with a smirk, "See what I did for you? Now you owe me." Kindness that comes with a receipt isn't kindness. I didn't know that back then. By the time I got home, the sun had started to dip. Wyatt was in the living room, his shoes off, remote in hand, TV flickering across his face. I sat at the edge of the couch. "Wyatt," I began quietly, "do you think Dina's being fair?" He barely looked up. "She's always been like this," he said, clicking through channels. "What's the point of fighting?" "Maybe the point," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "is to stop pretending she's right." He sighed, resting the remote on his stomach. "You know how she gets, Delara. It's not worth the mess." There it was again. That tone. The same tone he used when he wanted peace at any cost, except the cost was always mine. I turned off the lamp and stood there for a moment, the TV's glow reflecting off his blank expression. "You're not even trying anymore," I whispered. He didn't reply. Maybe he didn't hear me. Maybe he didn't want to. I walked out quietly, the sound of the refrigerator hum following me into the kitchen. You start to wonder if your silence was ever your own choice. Later that night, I was paying bills when a PayPal notification popped up on my screen. "You've received $20 from Claire R." I frowned. A friend repaying me for coffee months ago, $20. Nothing special, yet it pulled a thread I hadn't touched in years. I opened my notebook and started writing. Not just numbers, but moments. $150 for groceries, $500 for car repairs, $75 for emergency gas money. I added words beside each one. Embarrassment, guilt, obligation. I sat back and stared at the list. This wasn't about money. It was about the quiet pattern, every favor, every manipulation dressed up as need. Scrolling through my phone, I came across an old folder labeled Family BBQ 2019. Inside was a voice memo I didn't remember recording. Out of curiosity, I pressed play. Laughter filled the speakers. Then Dina's voice, confident, cutting. "You just have to make her feel useful. That's the trick. She can't say no." Someone else laughed, and another voice, Wyatt's cousin maybe, said, "You're terrible." Dina laughed louder. "Oh, please, she loves it." Makes her feel important. The sound of my own laugh echoed faintly in the background, small and polite. The kind of laugh you give when you don't realize you're the joke. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, but something sharper. Awakening. It was the kind of clarity that burns. I grabbed my phone, opened Dina's contact, and deleted her photo. The screen flashed blank where her smile used to be. That gray circle felt cleaner, freer. When my daughter came into the kitchen that evening, she sat across from me with her sketchbook. "Mom," she asked quietly, "why didn't Aunt Dina come to my party?" I looked at her, unsure how much truth she could hold. "Sometimes people choose not to show up," I said gently. "It doesn't mean you're unlovable." She blinked, processing that. I wasn't waiting for her. It hit me like a mirror held up too soon. I smiled softly. "That's good," I whispered. "That's really good." Later that night, after she went to bed, I sat at my laptop again. This time, I opened a blank email and started typing. It wasn't planned. The words just came. I wrote about the years of biting my tongue, the guilt that wasn't mine to carry, the exhaustion of always being the one who forgave. It wasn't angry. It was honest. When I reached the end, I read the last line twice. "I will not carry what isn't mine anymore." I deleted the email, but I copied that sentence and pasted it into a sticky note on my desktop. It glowed quietly in the corner. A reminder. A vow. Just before midnight, I was getting ready for bed when Wyatt's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He looked at the screen, hesitated, then flipped it over. I caught the name before it went dark. Dina. "Who was that?" I asked. He didn't look up. No one. I didn't push. I didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. The next morning, I was making breakfast when the phone rang. The caller ID said the name of my daughter's school. My heart dropped before I even answered. "Mrs. Grant," the voice said, calm and clipped. "We received an anonymous call expressing concern about your daughter's well-being. We just needed to follow up." "Concern?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly. "What kind of concern?" "Nothing to worry about. Everything looks fine. We just had to document it." After the call ended, I stood still for a long time. The toast in the toaster burned, the smell filling the kitchen. I didn't move. I didn't need proof. I knew who did it. When you start saying no, they don't fight fair. They fight dirty. I woke before dawn. The world was still, but my mind was loud. Sleep felt like an old habit I'd outgrown. The echo of Retta's voice memo haunted me. How she spoke of exclusion like it was a plan, not cruelty. In that quiet, I realized I wasn't wondering anymore. I was deciding. Downstairs, I poured coffee, then went to my desk. The draft email was still open, its words raw and honest. I read them again, slowly, tasting their weight. I didn't delete it. I let it stand. I rehearsed in my head the lines I might one day say to Dina, not in desperation, but as boundary. That little drawing my daughter made sat beside the keyboard. "Best mom ever." I pressed its corners and then tucked it into the drawer. Not because I was ashamed, but because I needed to protect it, to keep it untarnished. Then I flipped my phone face down. Silence would have to be my ally today. Around midday, the doorbell broke the hush. A courier handed me a certified envelope. I signed, closed the door, and stared at the thick paper in my hand. My name printed neatly above the return address, a law firm. Inside was a cease and desist letter. Dina's attorney claimed I had defamed her in statements I hadn't even sent. The legal jargon was cold and precise. My pulse jumped. How dare they put words in my mouth I never spoke? I photographed every page, then backed them up online, in my drive, everywhere I could. This was no longer emotional. It was procedural. I was building a record. I dialed Retta, hands shaking despite the calm I was trying to own. She answered quietly, as always. "Delara," she said, "I know about the letter." "You knew," I said. "You orchestrated this." She paused. "You imply things you can't prove." "I can prove them," I said firmly. She chuckled. "Proof doesn't always win, Delara. Perception does. Right now, you're making yourself look unhinged." That word stabbed. I held my voice steady. "You can't rewrite my story." "I'm just giving advice," she whispered, but the poison was clear. I hung up, heart pounding. The battle line was drawn, not with anger, but with resolve. Later, I met Marisol at the cafe. She listened as I laid out the letter. Then she looked me in the eye. "You need legal advice, even if it's just to protect your peace." I eyed the busy cafe, children laughing, couples talking. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Me too. But sometimes courage is showing up anyway." I nodded, swallowed hard. Back at home, the light was soft, the room still. I played the voice memo again. Retta's voice was clear. "Keep her out, so no one questions." That was her plan. I sat with it, cold and angry. I saved the file, named it proofvoicememo.wave, backed it to cloud, copied to a flash drive. The floor creaked behind me. Wyatt stood there, arms crossed. "You're the one messing with us," he said, quiet but accusing. It had been a week since the letter. The house felt different now, quiet but not peaceful, like the calm before a storm. Wyatt came home early that evening, his face serious, his voice strangely measured. "Stay in tonight," he said, setting his keys down. "There's something important we need to talk about, over dinner." The way he said it, flat, rehearsed, made me uneasy. Still, I cooked. He set the table, straightened the silverware, avoided eye contact. When he finally sat down, he cleared his throat, but before he could speak, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was. Retta, standing on my porch with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hope I'm not intruding," she said sweetly. Wyatt thought it would be best if we all talked together. My stomach turned. She walked in like she owned the place, her perfume trailing behind her. I sat down slowly, heart thudding, while she placed a white envelope on the table between us. "I came here to make peace," she began, her tone soft and deliberate. "But I think closure works best when everyone's clear about what's owed." I didn't respond. She slid the envelope closer. Inside was a printed invoice, neatly itemized. Total, $1,250. Expenses she claimed I owed from some old family event. Things she'd offered, insisted on paying for herself. I stared at it, then at her. "This is a joke, right?" Retta smiled gently. "Not at all. It's just cleaning up loose ends. I'm sure you understand." Wyatt shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. That silence said everything. "This isn't about money," I said quietly. "No," she said, tilting her head. "It's about accountability." Something in me went cold. I realized then, it was never about misunderstanding. This was strategy. They wanted to corner me, to make me doubt my own footing. "Delara," Wyatt finally said, his voice soft. "Maybe it's best to just let it go." "You've been tense lately." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who was supposed to have my back now looked like a stranger caught between guilt and cowardice. Retta leaned in slightly, her tone patronizing. "You always take things so personally. Not everything's an attack." That line, the calm dismissal, ignited something deep inside me. I'd heard it before. I'd believed it before. A flash of memory hit. Years ago, at a dinner just like this, when Dina had asked for money for the good of the family. They'd all looked at me then the way they looked at me now, expectant, rehearsed, waiting for me to fold. Gaslighting isn't when they lie to you, it's when they make you doubt what you know is true. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the floor, sharp and final. "Dinner's over," I said. "Delara," Wyatt started, but I cut him off. "You both need to leave." Retta's smile didn't waver. "I think you're overreacting. Out!" At that moment, my daughter stepped into the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, what's going on?" Retta turned instantly sweet. "Hey, sweetheart, we were just having a grown-up talk. Sometimes adults disagree, but it's all love." I stepped between them. My voice came out steady. "We don't confuse kindness with weakness here." Retta froze. My daughter looked up at me, then nodded, small but certain. That single nod hit me harder than any argument could. It was enough. Retta gathered her bag. "You're making a mistake, Delara." "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." When the door finally shut behind them, the air in the house shifted. Wyatt stayed by the table, staring at the untouched food. He tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "If you can't stand up for me in our home," I said, "then you're standing against me." He blinked, caught off guard. "That's not fair. It's not fair that I keep defending people who won't defend me." My voice stayed calm. "You have a choice, Wyatt. Support me or step aside. There's no middle ground left." His mouth opened, but no words came. I watched the realization flicker in his eyes. Fear, confusion, guilt, all tangled. Then I set the final piece on the table. My phone. I pressed play. Retta's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "Keep her out, so no one questions roles." Wyatt's face drained of color. "I hired a lawyer," I said. "This isn't a family squabble, it's a pattern, and it ends now." The silence that followed was heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Later that night, after he'd gone upstairs without a word, I sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from my phone screen. It vibrated once, unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Grant?" a man's voice said. This is Detective Halverson. A report's been filed against you. I'd like to ask a few questions. My throat went dry. A report? Yes, ma'am. It concerns possible harassment and I didn't hear the rest. My hand shook, the phone slipping slightly against my ear. I'd thought drawing boundaries would set me free. I didn't know it would make me the enemy. Late afternoon. I was in the kitchen, reheating leftovers, when the knock came. It wasn't casual. Firm, rhythmic. I opened the door to two uniformed officers, hands resting near their belts. Not aggressive, but not warm either. Are you Miss Delara Klein? Yes, I answered, my voice steady, though my chest clenched. We'd like to speak with you regarding a complaint that's been filed. May we come in? Behind them, across the street, I saw Mr. Loring peering through his blinds. Of course. Perfect timing. Come in, I said, stepping aside. One officer handed me a printed document, formal, stamped, filled with stiff language. Complainant, Dina Landon. Allegations, financial dispute, harassment, and defamation. I read it twice, then sat down slowly. I knew this was coming, just didn't expect it to feel so calculated. We're not here to arrest you, one of them said. We're conducting a preliminary inquiry. I understand, I said. You mind if I record this for my records? They hesitated, then nodded. I set my phone on the table. They began reading sections out loud. Alleged debts, threatening tone in past communications, reputational damage. I kept my hands folded, fingers locked tight. I won't be signing anything today, I said firmly, not without legal review. That's your right, the older officer replied. They wrapped it up politely, but with that law and order stiffness that makes you feel like you're already guilty. Please be advised, he said as they stood. This may escalate depending on the outcome of our findings. I walked them out. Mr. Loring ducked behind his curtains. Back inside, I sat in silence, then hit stop on the recording. My face felt hot, not from fear, from embarrassment. Humiliation burned deeper than anger, but underneath that, something stronger, something cleaner. If kindness is not weakness, I muttered aloud, then firmness is not aggression. That evening, I drove across town. Marisol had set up the appointment. Her friend Alicia was a civil attorney with a quiet, no-nonsense demeanor. Her office smelled of old wood and lavender. She reviewed the complaint, flipping pages with quiet precision. They're baiting you, she said, trying to paint you as unstable. Marisol sat beside me, her hand resting on mine. What if they twist everything I say? I asked. They already are, Alicia said flatly. So you say nothing, publicly at least, for now. Her words landed hard but clean. You'll need to prepare a statement eventually, she added, but we control the timing. I nodded. This isn't just personal anymore. No, it's a strategy, so let's build yours. She handed me a folder. Inside, instructions, a list of evidence to compile. Next steps. We shook hands. Hers was strong, dry, purposeful. When I got home, the house was still. Wyatt was out. My daughter was already in bed. I sat at my desk, pulled open the drawer, and took out the USB drive. The voice memo Retta never thought I'd hear. I listened again, her voice, calm, calculating. Keep her out, so no one questions roles. I clicked export, saved it twice, backed it up to the cloud. Then I opened the draft email, the one they claimed was defamation. I reread it with a new lens. Legal, not emotional. That's when it hit me. I couldn't erase the past, but I could defend my present. I pulled out a notebook and began writing a letter. To my daughter, just in case. Age-appropriate, honest, not to shame anyone, but to explain what happens when people mistake silence for surrender. By the time I closed the notebook, the evidence pile had grown. Receipts, texts, that voicemail, a copy of the cease and desist, now this new police interaction. I locked the drawer. Stood. It was after midnight when I heard the soft slide of something under the front door. An envelope. I picked it up slowly. No markings. No return address. Inside. A check. $1,250. and a small cream-colored note. Consider this a gift, not a debt. No name. I stared at it, pulse rising. A peace offering? A trap? Either way, they thought money would hush me. They still didn't get it. Silence is what I broke free from. Late evening, and my phone lit the dark room. I picked it up with trembling fingers. Retta had posted a clipped video from the party. It was edited to make me look hysterical, selfish, out of control. The caption accused me of making a scene. Comments poured in, some supportive, many vicious. Typical attention seeker. She started it. I felt the sting, but also something rising, determination. I screenshot every comment, archived them. I wouldn't let her rewrite the story. When they make you the villain, you find your hero inside. A few nights later, a community meeting was scheduled at the local library, book club turned forum for neighborhood concerns. I knew Retta would be there, so would people we both knew. I walked in quietly, heart thudding, and found her already speaking, her voice practiced, projecting confidence. She described the party events in her version. Inclusions and exclusion, insinuating I'd overreacted. The crowd nodded, some faces skeptical, some convinced. I stayed silent until she finished. Then I stood. My voice was clear. I'm not here for drama. I'm here for truth. I pulled out my phone, played the voice memo, the full, unedited version. Retta's voice, calm and cold. Make sure she's excluded so no one questions what's normal. I held up documents, texts, past messages, showing patterns of exclusion. Murmurs rose. Some gasped, faces shifted. Marisol stood next to me and spoke up. She confirmed Retta had privately bragged she'd orchestrate things years ago. A hush fell. Then Wyatt, hesitating, walked in. He looked torn, but then moved forward, put a hand on my shoulder. He said, I believe her. A neighbor shared their own story, how family had manipulated them, how small acts of gaslighting had piled up. Others nodded in recognition. People shared solidarity. I closed with a simple phrase, you can't erase someone who never stopped being there. And I pressed play again, all that clarity, in full. The room froze. Retta's face went red. She had no words. My tone stayed steady, firm. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, letting the evidence speak. After the meeting, my phone buzzed. Retta sent a group message. You all should rethink what you've heard. I watched it, knowing the fight was far from over. The night air pressed in. Truth is a candle in the dark, and I'm holding mine steady. The next afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on work, when my phone buzzed non-stop. Notifications flooded in from every direction. Someone had dug up an old social media post from Retta, 3 years old, where she'd bragged about choosing who gets to belong. The irony burned through the screen. That same woman, now preaching about inclusion and kindness, had written her own confession. The post was spreading fast. People were sharing screenshots, quoting her own words back at her. For the first time, I felt the current shift. Vindication came with a strange weight. My hands trembled not from fear, but from adrenaline. I took screenshots of everything, archived the threads, saved each timestamp. They forgot you can't erase the past if someone saved it, I whispered to myself. The wave didn't stop there. By evening, Retta's upcoming wellness talk was canceled. The venue issued a short statement. Event suspended due to safety and registration concerns. That was it. No details, just a clean cut. An hour later, I received a private message from the manager. I'm sorry, it read. There's too much backlash. We can't host her right now. I stared at the screen, conflicted. Relief flickered, but so did pity. She'd built her image carefully, piece by piece, and now it was crumbling. But before I could exhale, another notification popped up. Retta's post. Certain people have tried to sabotage my professional life, she wrote, out of jealousy and bitterness. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Comments split instantly, half defending her, half calling her out. The noise was deafening. I wanted to respond, to correct every lie, but I stopped myself, let it burn itself out. The truth didn't need me to shout. Still, the pressure grew. At the grocery store, a neighbor hesitated to greet me. Another leaned closer and whispered, We saw the post. You doing okay? Even the cashier lingered too long when handing back my card. At home, Wyatt was waiting in the living room, his expression weary. "Are we making enemies for life over this?" he asked quietly. I sat down across from him, took a slow breath. "We didn't make enemies, Wyatt. They made choices. I'm just not pretending anymore." He rubbed his temples. "But what's the end game here? You think people forget this?" "No," I said. "I think they finally remember what really happened." That night, I gathered everything: voice memos, screenshots, receipts, laid them out on the dining table. It wasn't anger anymore. It was preparation. I drafted a statement, short, calm, factual, no dramatics, no blame, just the truth, stripped of all performance. The next morning, I posted it publicly. The caption read, "Facts don't need defense, only daylight." I uploaded the full voice memo, the original screenshots, the timeline, every word traceable. Within an hour, the thread exploded. People commented, shared, debated. Some apologized. Some attacked harder. Retta fired back online, threatening legal consequences for defamation. I didn't reply. I closed my laptop, sat still. There's a quiet that follows truth. A silence heavy enough to fill a room. By evening, my inbox was flooded again. Some messages offered support. Others were warnings. "Be careful. She's not done." I walked into the living room where my daughter Tallis was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up at me, her face pale. "Mom," she said softly, "someone texted me." I took the phone from her hand. One line, no name. "She's coming for you next." The words blurred for a second before they sank in. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I looked at my daughter, then at the glow of the screen. They canceled her event. Now she was aiming deeper. I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet except for the sound of tape peeling from boxes. The air smelled faintly of cardboard and coffee. Light crept through half-covered windows, painting stripes across the living room floor. It was moving day, the end and the beginning, both waiting in the same room. Tallis sat cross-legged near the last open box, clutching the best mom ever drawing she'd made years ago. The edges were frayed, the colors faded, but the message still shone. She handed it to me without a word, and I tucked it gently into a folder with the other things worth keeping. Not evidence this time, just memory. We loaded the last few boxes into the van together. The scarf I used to fold into a swan rested on top of the pile, still holding its shape after all these years. I paused by the front door, keys in hand, eyes sweeping across the room that had held so many nights of fear and awakening. Leaving doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing who to keep walking with. Outside, the morning air felt lighter than I remembered. Halfway through packing, my phone buzzed. A new message. Retta's name blinked on the screen. One last attempt. "You'll regret this. We always win in the end." I stared at it for a moment, feeling nothing but clarity. Then I typed, "You lost long before I left." I hit send, blocked her number, blocked every account she had, deleted the shared family group chat that had once been a lifeline and later became a weapon. Watching it disappear felt like an exhale that had been trapped for years. By mid-morning, neighbors started stopping by. Some I barely knew. One woman from 2 houses down said softly, "I should have said something sooner. I saw how she treated you." Another man nodded from the sidewalk. "You handled yourself better than most would have." The community hall posted my statement on their bulletin board. Someone even left a printed article at my door. The local paper had quoted the full voice memo in context without spin. For the first time, the truth wasn't whispered, it was written. I didn't smile exactly, but something inside settled. Vindication isn't triumph. It's the quiet peace that follows when people finally see what you saw all along. In the afternoon, Tallis and I drove out to the creek park, the same place she used to run barefoot when she was little, chasing ducks, laughing until her hair stuck to her cheeks. We brought a small sapling, a gift from Marisol, and planted it near the water. Our story, our growth, I said, pressing soil around the roots. Tallis looked up at me and smiled. Mom and me, stronger together, she said, holding up a new drawing she'd made on the ride over. The same words, new handwriting, a full circle moment, drawn in crayon. As dusk settled, we stood by the van, watching the light fade behind the trees. I unfolded the old scarf, the one that had once symbolized patience, now resilience. It was still soft, still whole. I draped it over the new home's windowsill when we arrived, letting it flutter in the evening breeze. Thank you, I whispered to no one in particular, maybe to the lessons, maybe to the pain that taught me, for showing me who I can be. Then, a knock at the door, soft, deliberate. Tallis looked at me, eyes wide. I straightened, heart calm but alert, ready for whatever came next. A new dawn doesn't promise peace. It promises another chance.